very warm welcome to Daily Dispatch, a show that gives you all the latest news and updates from the digital ecosystem. I'm Priya Sheth. Thank you very much for logging in and now to get you all the top news stories that we've been tracking for you this evening. Well, first up, Zomato has priced the initial public offering of its shares between 72 to 76 rupees a piece, which will help it raise 9,375 crore rupees. The subscription will open on July 14th and close on July 16th. Now, 9,000 crore rupees of the expected raise will come from a fresh issuance, while existing shareholder Info Edge's offer for sale is expected to bring in the remaining 375 crore rupees. Well, contract manufacturing platform Zetwork Manufacturing Businesses nearly tripled its total revenue to 949 crore rupees in FY 2021 from 360 crore rupees for the same period last year. The firm also claims to have reduced its net cash used from operations to 80 crore rupees from 115 crore rupees for the year ended March 2020. Well, Ola will soon commence the production of electric scooters at its factory in Tamil Nadu. Now, Ola had announced a 2,400 crore rupee investment last year for setting up its first electric scooter factory in Tamil Nadu. Now, upon completion, the factory will create nearly 10,000 jobs and is expected to be the world's largest scooter manufacturing facility that will initially have an annual production capacity of about 2 million units. Well, moving on to the final headline of the day, Chennai-based online matrimony company Matrimony.com has signed definitive agreements to acquire 100% stake in Boatman Tech Private Limited, the promoters of Shadi Saga, which is a Delhi-based online wedding services portal. Now, this deal enables Matrimony.com to scale up its presence significantly in the North and the West region and strengthen its product capabilities, as well as become the largest wedding services player across the country.
A very warm welcome to this panel discussion. Moving on to our second segment, the topic of the panel discussion today is decoding India's job market. And to discuss this, we have two very prominent personalities from the space. I have with me Nicolas Dumoulin from Michael Page, and I have Sekhar Garisa from Monster India. Thank you very much for joining us today on the Daily Dispatch. But just before I dive into this discussion, I want to give a little bit of context as far as the jobs market is concerned. Now, if you look at over the last few months, we've been in the middle of a pandemic. The job scenario over the last year has been challenging for different sectors, but of course, it's been a mixed bag when it comes to other sectors such as IT as well as healthcare. But data from the CMIE shows that in May, this unemployment rate touched about 11.9%, and this kind of unemployment rate further went up in the month of June. But of course, there are some green shoots as far as recovery is concerned, and we're going to discuss more about this in this panel discussion. I want to come to you, Nicolas, first to talk to you about the kind of environment that we're in. Over the last couple of months, you've been seeing the kind of waves that India has been through as far as the pandemic is concerned. What's been the correlation with regards to the jobs market?
I think in the jobs market, we've seen a very strong activity since the beginning of the year. And there was a second wave that temporarily has halted some of that activity, but we've seen in the last couple of weeks things have completely come back. And this is one of the strongest markets I've seen in the white-collar mid to senior level hiring in the last 8-9 years since I'm in India. So very strong activity which is there, and happy to elaborate if you require a little bit more on this.
Right. Sekhar, I want to bring you in at this point in time. At Monster, you've been tracking the kind of postings as well on the website. What's been your experience over the last couple of months? Do you think that the second wave has only been a short-term setback and things are looking better now?
Absolutely. I think I completely echo what Nicolas said. In terms of severity, we all know that second wave was significantly higher than first wave. But in terms of impact on jobs, I think I can safely say that companies may have put off their plans by a month or two, but they have come back very strongly. In fact, we just released our monthly analytics last week, and we're seeing that across the board, we've seen a significant increase in hiring trends, especially in the mid to senior levels, like Nicolas also mentioned. This is probably the strongest demand scenario that we've also seen in the past few years. So jobs across the board have come back. I think there was reasonable confidence even as we were going through second wave that, we probably now know how to deal and tackle with this pandemic a little better than we were in the first wave, where honestly everything was an unknown. So even though the second wave was more acute, I think the hiring plans haven't been impacted as badly.
Right, Nicholas, I want to understand the kind of reason why we're seeing this sort of upsurge, specifically in top management roles, as Sekhar also was mentioning, where we've seen a kind of increase as far as demand is concerned. Can you highlight some reasons or attribute why we're seeing this kind of resurgence that's coming up? And if you can share your perspective from Michael Page, the kind of conversations you've been having with clients.
Yeah, so there's different things that come together. Let me start with the more new age businesses where we see a very strong possibility for them to further grow within the context of COVID, where specifically on the tech side, they require a lot of people to help scale up their businesses, and typically this will go across different levels. So that's one part we've seen picking up really, really hard already last year, and that this has continued to be one of the stories. Secondly, what we see is a lot of international companies who have shared services here in India are ramping up their tech capabilities as well, which is also something which has to do with the whole transformation to be more tech-oriented, even in traditional industries. And lastly, for more traditional businesses, there was a halt in hiring last year because they were not sure where things were moving at that point in time, and everyone has come back to the market at the same time. So everyone is suddenly needing that person which they required last year, but now they have the possibility to hire from the corporate level to add headcount. Maybe lastly, what I've also seen with domestic companies and the traditional industries, there's a good appetite for investment, which was not there before. And the investment is mainly to look at new business streams, new product lines, and not only looking at the sales angle of it, but also at how can we invest in R&D to get things going. So we see that across pharma, chemicals, and any other industry. So putting this all together has created some kind of perfect storm where for a candidate today at the mid-senior level, there's a lot of opportunity.
Right, Sekhar, I want to come to you to understand the kind of job postings that you've been seeing on your portal. In terms of sector-specific job postings, give us a sense as to which sectors are seeing an increase as far as hiring is concerned, and which are the sectors that have really bounced back, after maybe perhaps a dip in the first wave.
Yep, sure. Priya, I think given that we're part of Quess Group, we probably have the widest view in terms of what's happening both across blue collar, white collar, across sectors, experience levels, locations. So what we're seeing broadly is that, the usual suspects like IT, IT software, ITES, healthcare, manufacturing, these are the ones where we're seeing significant uptick in demand. And that's what is actually propelling the index forward. I mean, if you're saying that compared to last month, this month, we've grown 4% sequentially, we are 7% up from where we were last June. It's because some of these segments that I spoke about, healthcare, IT, manufacturing, these are the ones which are propelling this number forward. However, we do have to say at this point in time that we are still not seeing as healthy a trend in sectors that have gotten deeply impacted, travel and tourism. Large format retail, which, as we can imagine, these are things which have not gotten back to normalcy yet, and therefore you will see. And also, while the digital side of edtech, we're seeing a significant uptake, and we've seen how many unicorns have been created just in the past year on the edtech side, and therefore it reflects in hiring. The offline side of education is again something that has been severely impacted. So those are the spaces where we know that the hiring has still not come back. But again, it's been more than compensated by the demand that we are seeing. Also, it's interesting to see in terms of how it's playing out in levels of experience. Like I said, mid-level and senior level, there's far greater demand than we've seen. For the first time after quite a few months, and maybe it's also got to do with the timing, in June, we've seen an increase of 6% in terms of fresher hiring. which has been something that has been significantly impacted over the past couple of quarters. So some good news for folks in the 0 to 3 years work experience. The other interesting trend that we've seen is the job rebounds has been pretty good in the tier 1 cities, but surprisingly not so much in tier 2 cities. And one possible hypothesis for this could be because more companies are open for remote working. So even folks who are still based in tier 2 cities may find it easier to find jobs, which technically were earlier based in tier 1 cities. So, you can clearly see some trends emerging now.
I want to specifically talk about the blue collar economy or the gig economy. And I believe that that's been one segment that has been massively impacted over the last couple of months. Nicholas, I want to bring you in at this point in time in terms of the whole blue collar economy in India. What's your perspective? Do you think that this is a short term or a temporary setback for the whole gig economy? And when do you see jobs here bouncing back really, specifically in construction and other sectors?
So I think if there's one particular field where there's definitely has been an impact overall, it's on the blue collar side. Because Michael Page, we of course operate in mid to senior level, but typically because of supply chain issues, because of issues on construction sites and so on, because of the fact that some blue collars went back to their hometowns, there has been a little bit of disruption within the whole ecosystem. And that has translated in lower hiring across because of the insecurity or the uncertainty which is happening. Now, this is temporarily in nature because my view is if the economy as a whole is growing, there will be necessarily growth within manufacturing, within construction, and so on. And I foresee that also coming back at a certain point in time when the disruption of the lockdowns gets eased and people return back to certain parts of the country. But yeah, there I've seen most of the disruption at this point in time because remote working is simply not possible in these positions.
Right, Sekhar, do you want to come in out there on the blue collar economy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's again we're seeing some significant trends in there. Like Nicholas said, rightly, blue collar has been quite significantly impacted. But the good part about blue collar workforce is, they could easily do 2 or 3 jobs. A driver could become a delivery boy. A front sales executive could become a warehouse picker packer. So I think there's reasonable chance for people to be mobile and kind of move towards opportunities that exist. We did it a lot within Quess Group. And as you know, we have more than 350,000 employees working in the blue collar segment. And so, we do know dynamics of this in great bit of detail. So a lot of folks actually move towards, warehousing, logistics, delivery from places where the demand has been muted, like retail, sales executives and roles like that. So we saw that, and also like we all know, there's been a huge deal of worker migration that has happened. And so what we're also seeing is that will result in some kind of change in the way people will look for job in the future, which means people want to find jobs which are very hyper local in nature. And therefore, a lot of hiring of blue collar has moved towards digital platforms, and digital platforms have the ability to enable it. Can you literally find a job which is 5 kilometers within your radius? Because now the new normal is we don't know when the public transport is going to work. So people are no longer, they're keen to find a job which is 20 kilometers away. So hyper local nature of the job is gaining significant importance. Second, having multiple skill sets so that, in times like this, you can quickly move to another job. And we're seeing it in our platform Q Jobs, where we actually encourage people to take skill stamps of multiple jobs so that they can showcase their proficiency, saying I can be A, I can be B, I can be C, and that helps them in times like this. The hiring has become completely digitized, so a lot of people are using online platforms to find jobs. And also the other thing that's coming in is, companies also want to de-risk themselves. So they no longer want to pay for time. They want to have the ability to pay for task, and in some cases pay for outcome. So gig economy, even in the blue collar space, and we've made some strategic investments as a group in one of the platforms called Taskmo. So we're seeing a lot of traction there where companies also want to have that flexibility. The true test for us is going to be the peak season now, which is another couple of months. We're all hoping that, by the time we hit the festival season, August, September, the numbers would look very robust again. And we're quietly optimistic about it. And the conversations internally for us and with many of our customers is this Q3 is possibly going to be the best ever, because there'll be a lot of demand rebound, and we're all hoping for that. And we're hoping that wave 3 doesn't dampen any of this trend that we're seeing. So a lot of important stuff. I think both white collar and blue collar, we're seeing the changes, but we're also seeing broad trends emerging now, which probably will give us pointers for what the new normal is going to look like.
Right, this brings me to a very important aspect of the whole hiring process, which is salaries. And I want to ask you both this question in terms of how salaries are shaping up in terms of the kind of trajectory that you're seeing. So, Nicolas, if you could run us through what kind of trends and trajectories are you seeing as far as overall salaries are concerned, specifically in the mid and senior level in which you operate in largely?
Yeah. So the salary increments for last year that were given in April were around 8 to 9% of what in terms of increment across. But there's huge disparity in terms of industries and functions, which we are seeing, where of course technology-driven setups are much higher, and then the more impacted industries like retail, hospitality, and so on would have been on the other side, where sometimes there are still salary cuts in place. So it's a huge disparity which has come from that. Now, just maybe an interesting point. What is more interesting to see is when people change jobs in skill sets which are highly sought after, there are increments which are given which I have not seen before, especially in technology. Increments of 40-50% are coming more and more in place, especially in the Bangalore market. We see some kind of craziness, if I can say it, where a candidate would have 3, 4, 5 offers and then can choose and pick what they want to do. People stay for 9 months in a job and change again for another job. So the buoyancy, especially in the tech space, and then more specifically in Bangalore, is I think at levels which is not so healthy in my view.
I think there's no better time to be a techie in India. I think I have never seen anything like this. I will actually agree to what Nicolas said. At times you feel it's unhealthy because it kind of sets wrong expectations. It also brings out some wrong behaviors both on the parts of the organizations as well as candidates. But like I said, it's the best time to be a techie. Especially if you're working in technologies that are hot. Today, if you want to find a search expert in the market, it's just impossible. And we see it as someone who provides candidates to other organizations, also as a large employer ourselves. For some of these mid-level, senior-level roles, which are around tech, product, etc., it's just a nightmare to find good talent. So never been a better time to be a techie. However, there are also, we also have to kind of play the balance here. There are enough sectors where, we have not seen, salary increments, or maybe the sectors which are still seeing some salary cuts, marginal, however, they might be. So there's a lot of good news around tech, not so much of that good news flowing into some of the traditional sectors. But overall, it's good to see that hiring has come back, and when hiring comes back, and the demand goes up, automatically you will see that the salary levels of across the board will go up. Also, what was heartening to see is in our surveys, it's coming out that more than 50-60% of the organizations have paid their incentives, variable pays. So that's a good sign always, which also shows that they want to retain people, shows a sign of confidence about businesses going forward. So all in all, I think it's a good story, and it's a great story if you are techie, but good story nevertheless.
Nicolas, I want to ask you, about the salary structure. Are you seeing a shift in the kind of salary structure? Sekhar briefly mentioned about the variable pay part of the entire salary pie as well. So are you looking, with remote working as also becoming an important aspect of people in jobs these days, do you think that salary structures have changed where it's a performance-based kind of benefits that are larger than the fixed component that are shaping up? What's the kind of trend out there?
So it's again a pretty mixed answer here. I think traditional industries would typically have the same type of salary structure. I don't think there's a big change unless Sekhar will say something different. But I've not seen anything as such, especially the international companies. We don't foresee any particular change there. Where I do have some conversations is more with Indian um, tier two companies in their industries, which are pure on complete fixed salary and don't have a bonus structure to start introducing this to get more performance based rewards. But these are more very traditional old school companies which start thinking on these lines, and that has been a continuous process even before COVID. So this is not necessarily only COVID induced. Um, I think on the startup phase and the the whole new age economy, of course, the whole element of stock options is an important aspect, which has been already since a couple of years a big driver for a lot of people to make a transfer within that industry, and this is continuing to be the case. So I think the trends which were already in place before COVID are just similar. There's no specific change I've seen.
Right, Shekhar, I want to talk to you about global companies and the kind of hiring for Indians out there. Are you looking at a lot of overseas roles also coming up in terms of overall postings, or is it largely domestic hiring that's happening out there?
No, we are actually seeing it. If you see, one other impact of COVID has been that the mobility of people into different markets has come down, right? So we also operate in markets like Singapore, Middle East, etc. Right there is a great demand for local talent now because no more employment passes are being generated in the last few months or so. But especially on the tech side, right, people are more and more comfortable about getting work delivered here. For the work that they have, if they can't find local talent, they have no other option but to find talent here. And there are several new age organizations which are coming in, which are actually changing the paradigm of working from here for organizations there, and they are focusing on the top tier talent, which is essentially saying if you are the top 5% of the tech talent, right, you could potentially be staying in India and earning in dollars. And there are a number of startups which are trying to enable this, which is an interesting trend. The other trend that we are seeing, and I think Nicholas alluded to, is proliferation of GCCs, the global innovation centers or captive centers in India. That number has been going up significantly, which means a lot of work is moving from there to here. So I think the work mobility or the work mobility is happening. Job mobility may not be needed going forward for work mobility to happen. People can stay wherever they are. Almost everyone is way more comfortable with remote working now than they were 18 months back prior to the pandemic. So, especially a sector like IT, which was anyways used to it, pandemic only accelerated it. So from that perspective, we will see a lot more of folks sitting wherever they are sitting, but maybe aspire for getting paid in global currency. That's bound to happen. And there are enough organizations which are trying to accelerate it. So all in all, I think, for folks like us in India, more and more opportunities coming in from places where maybe, the rates are significantly higher in terms of what they'll be able to pay. So that's definitely something that we're seeing. What we're also seeing is the hiring activity itself moving here, because given our global partnership with Monster Europe and US, we also cater to customers who are sitting in India but carrying out hiring activity there. Even there, we are seeing significant uptick, which means a lot of the hiring activity itself has gotten outsourced in the past few months to folks in India.
Right. I'm going to come to a final closing question for the two of you in terms of the future outlook and the kind of current scenario. So I want to understand whether 2021 is going to be the best year in terms of hiring that we've seen over the last couple of years. Nicholas, what's your take on this? Is it going to be the best year yet?
Well, I hope so, yeah, because I'm in the industry of hiring, so hope is always there, but I do also think it will be. Typically, after a crisis, hiring patterns are always much higher. So that's been proven, and it's often a year and a half, 2 years later where things start to slow down again. A lot will depend also for the long-term focus of hiring in terms of how the economy is really transforming. And I think that's more the mid long-term story, which will support this. But for this year, I think there's enough to say that it will continue till the end of the year at least.
Yeah, we remain very, very optimistic both on the white collar and blue collar side. I think we've been hearing about terms like revenge consumerism, revenge travel, that people would just go berserk once they're allowed to do so by the pandemic. And I think it's going to happen in hiring as well, because a lot of companies were waiting on the wait and watch mode for a while, and they all the requirement is going to get bunched up. So we're going to see huge amount of activity. However, there's also going to be a few change in trends in terms of how the hiring itself will take place, what kind of skills will people look for. So it's important to be on the right side of that line to be able to take advantage of this, both for companies as well as for candidates. But we remain very optimistic about what's going to happen in the second half of the year.
All right, so we can expect some revenge hiring to take place in this year, and some green shoots, as the two of you have mentioned in the panel. Thank you very much for your wonderful insights, and thank you so much for being a part of this very interesting, insightful panel, Decoding India's Job Market. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Well, time now to wrap up this edition of the Daily Dispatch. I'll catch you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Goodbye and stay safe.